Hey there, Bolters. Welcome back to another really exciting premium customer workshop. In this workshop, we're going to be focusing on two main things. Firstly, we're going to be considering scaling your app. And when it comes to bandwidth considerations that you need to have as a developer, we'll be looking at optimizing image sizes and also pagination so that when you're scaling your app, you're using the appropriate amount of bandwidth. In the second part of the workshop, we're going to be looking how you can supercharge your app and power it up using AI integrations. So we're going to look at OpenAI and we're going to do vector embeddings and retrieval augmented generation so that you can do semantic search on this customer feedback portal. And then we're going to finish off by bringing in markdown documents from OpenAI's website into your project root and using that as contextual knowledge so that we can build out an API call to ChatGPT 5.2, their newest model, and we're going to be summarizing all of the feedback that you have inside your app. So with that, let's dive into it. First of all, what we're going to do is let's jump back into the app that we've been building over the last 2 weeks. Now, if you're new to this workshop, no worries. We'll just do a quick recap of what we've built. So here is a customer feedback portal. So basically, users can sign in. We've got our database set up where we can see our profiles, we can see our users. We've implemented role-based access control. So basically, depending on whether these users have been marked as an administrator or a member, determines the privileges that they have. So if we come back into our user management, we can have a look and we can see some of our users that we have here. And we can basically sign up for new accounts and leave feedback. So let's just kind of walk through that process. What I'm going to do is we'll create a new account. We'll call it Ben. We're going to say ben@gmail.com. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we're going to create an account. So just like that, our user Ben has been logged in. And notice at the top here, they've got access to all the feedback. They can then basically review some of these feedback items. They can submit feedback that they have, and they can even upvote, which we demoed last week as working in real time. So as soon as they upvote here, every other user who's looking at this website sees this happen in real time without having to refresh their page. So if we go into our database and we look at Ben, who's just signed up, here we go. We can click on member. We can make him an admin. We'll save those changes. And now, once we refresh the page, notice that our logged in user Ben is now an administrator. So this basically gives them access to the administrator dashboard. They can also select items and they can now change their status. They can say, okay, we're planning to work on this, or this item's in progress. They can pin items, delete them, etc. So that's basically where we're at from last week. Now, what we're going to focus on this week is we're going to start off by looking at kind of some bandwidth considerations and some important things to consider when you're scaling your app and you've got lots of users. So now to demonstrate this, what we're going to do. So what we're going to do is let's look at our submit a feature request process. At the moment, it says we've got our title, we've got our description and our category. Now let's add the ability to add a screenshot in here. So I'm simply going to prompt it just because I want to do this. Oh, what's going on here? I'm not sure if you can see that on my screen.
The drawing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It must
he's
have.
an artist.
Yeah. I must have clicked clear all drawings. Whoops. Okay.
Yeah.
That zoom feature. I haven't used that before, but good, we could get rid of it. Okay, so I'm going to switch to Opus 4.6 just because this is our most powerful model and I want to try and get things right from the start here for this demo. Now, what we're going to do is we want to prompt it to add a screenshot when we're leaving feedback. So I'm going to I've got whisper flow set up, so I'm just going to hold this button down and dictate directly. So I'll try and be as specific as possible. When a user is submitting a feature request, they should also be able to add a screenshot or an image into the feature request as well. This should be saved to the database. Relatively simple, and we're going to send this off. It's not particularly complicated, so we didn't really need to use plan mode here. So we'll let that work and we'll let that do its thing. Now, while that's working, let's jump over into a little bit of theory and let's think about, some bandwidth and some user experience considerations. So what's the problem that we're facing? Large data sets lead to low load times and high hosting bills. So it's a twofold issue here. So one is the slow load times from the user experience, and then also the high hosting bills from your perspective as the person who's hosting the application. The user performance, if there's thousands of feedback items, fetching all of these at once, or if they're fetching high resolution images, again, leads to that same issue where we're slowing down the user experience and we're increasing our hosting bills. So we want to be, cost efficient. We want to minimize the data transfer and save on the cloud infrastructure costs where possible without compromising the user experience too much. And so some of the solutions that we're going to implement today include pagination and image resizing. So if we jump back to our process, it looks like we're in the process of adding the image feature. So we'll just let that do its thing and we'll let it work. Hopefully it should be done in a minute or two. So if you guys aren't familiar, to look at the basically the bandwidth that's used within Bolt. If we click on the settings here, we go to project settings and we come down into cloud, this is where we can see our monthly usage allowance. So included in your plan, we offer unlimited databases, unlimited custom domains. The web hosting requests is 1 million per month. And you can see our web hosting bandwidth is up to 30 gigabytes per month. So think of that as about a gigabyte per day. So if you have, a gigabyte per day, so maybe if a user is using 1 megabyte if they're loading, 10 images, each of 100 kilobytes, that's a megabyte. You could do that for 1,000 users every day and still be within this web hosting bandwidth of 30 gigabytes per month. Now, as you scale up your application, you may exceed this, and then this is where we can change our spending limit. We can change this to basically mean that we won't get capped as we exceed these limits. Okay, so now the bandwidth is quite generous. However, if you're not managing your data in the correct way, then if you mismanage things, then you could accidentally go over this. And that's exactly what we're looking at today, how to manage this properly. So it looks like it's working on adding the images. It's just finished. So let's have a quick look here, explore feature board. So now we want to submit a request and let's just say test feature, test description, and then, okay, so it's added it to the UI. Let's see if it works. So here is an image that I have on my desktop and it's 1.7 megabytes. So we're going to open that. It's uploading it. It's added the screenshot. And now let's say submit requests. Okay, so we're going to structure these sort them by newest. Now we may need to refresh the page. It seems like it hasn't come through, or maybe it has, but it's not showing it in the so here we go. This was on the one that we just added. Test feature, test description. by Ben just now. And then you can see we've got this little icon of a photograph. So if we click it, there we go. The image that we've just uploaded has been added, and that feature that we just requested is working. So let's just put a quick pause on that. We're happy with where it's at. Obviously, we can sort of improve how it looks, and we'll get to that in a second. Now, because we're also going to be doing some API calls this workshop, and they do take some time to get working, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate the project. Oh, excuse me, guys. We just need to mute. Otherwise, I'll do it. Maybe, Erica, if you're able to mute some of the participants. I'm not sure if you have.
I don't know if I'm
those.
able to. No, I'm not.
Okay. Yeah, if we can all just mute ourselves. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. Anyway, let's carry on. So what I was saying is I'm going to duplicate the project. Now, what this does is it duplicates the database. It duplicates all the front-end code, but it obviously it doesn't transfer any of the data across, and our GitHub will be disconnected. So we're going to duplicate this, and I'm going to work on two versions of this project in parallel, because it, sometimes takes 5 to 10 minutes for these prompts to work. I want to keep these workshops engaging for you, so we're going to try and cover as much ground as possible. Great. So let's let that duplicate. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. All right. Do we have any questions so far? I think Erica's doing a good job of answering that in the chat. Okay, so here we go. We can see that we've got, this is our duplicated workshop. So we're happy with that. Now I'm going to open our original project again. Here we go. And this is the one we were just building on. Okay, so now let's inspect. We'll come back in here. We'll sign in as Ben, what we did before, gmail.com. 6. Close. We'll come back into our feedback board. And so what we just implemented here is we have our test feature and we've got our image. Now, what I'd like to do is show you how this inspect works. So all we need to do is we right click. Now we can do this on an actual URL. So here we are in like OpenAI's API dashboard. So we can inspect here if we, oh, sorry, I hit the wrong thing. We can inspect, and this basically where it brings out our console. We can look at all the network that's being used. We can do this on a live URL. We can also do it here within the preview of the Bolt project. So let's inspect. Now we're going to click on network, and the network is what we need to pay attention to for this specific purpose. It's going to show us all of the bandwidth that we're using while we're loading our project. So here we go. Whoops, we got to sign in again. So watch how this changes as we sign in. Oh, I may have 6 gmail.com. Huh. I think, this is the duplicated project. My bad. This is the one we're looking for. Great. Okay, so we're going to inspect and we're going to jump over into network and watch how this grows as we refresh the page. So it's loaded icons, it's loaded a whole bunch of things. Now we'll come into our feedback board. If we want to filter this, we can filter it by doing so. Notice I have disabled the cache because this basically, by doing so, every time we reload the page, it's reloading all of the assets again instead of saving them locally. So what we can do is if we want to clear the network, we just hit this icon here and it clears everything. Now, when we reload the page, it shows us everything that it's loading. Now, if we want to view this by size, we can, and we can filter it so that we now have our largest items at the top. And we can see, just a matter of kilobytes. So our page looks relatively optimized. Let's go into the feedback board. Now let's come down here to our test feature. If we click on this, it's now loading our test feature, and I've filtered it by size again. And now we can see that 1.6 or 1.7 megabyte image that we've loaded. We can see that it appears here. We can also see the total amount of bandwidth that we've used. So we've used 2.1 megabytes loading this page. And this basically is a really good way to, have a look at how much bandwidth we're using. Now, let's say we want to, in our feedback board, we want to actually display a little thumbnail image here on the right of the feature. Let's prompt for that. This is great. For the feedback items on the feedback board, if they have an image, I would like you to display it on the right-hand side of the feature card.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
Yeah, just wondering, Supabase uses AWS servers. I'm just wondering, is it possible to integrate with different servers like Azure or Google Cloud?
Good question. Because we use Superbase, I think it seems like Superbase's only option is AWS, I'm pretty sure. So I'm not sure. Erica, do you know exactly if we can? I don't think we can. I think that's my
I
gut.
don't think we can either.
Mm,
Yeah, I think we would like to stick to Supabase.
yeah.
Yeah, I have a customer that has would have certain data they can't share with AWS due to security reasons. That requires definitely Azure, Microsoft. Is there
Uh,
any way around it? If I, for example, load up my credentials to EC2 or not EC2, sorry, Microsoft Virtual Machine, for example, and just tell the agent that that's where my database is, that's going to help anything?
I don't think so. I think Bolt tends to have a tendency to overwrite ENV files because it's kind of linked up to work with Supabase the best. So I wouldn't recommend that.
And the Supabase itself, it's not possible to link it to a different server, right?
I actually don't know that question,
Mm.
that answer.
yeah.
I'll do some research. I'll try and get back to you.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Erica.
Sorry.
No problem. Okay, let's jump back to it. So here we go. So we've asked for that. Now, if we scroll down, fantastic. Here we can go. We can see our thumbnail is here within the test feature card. So what happens if let's clear the network log and let's reload this page again. Now we'll clear. Let's come into the feedback board. And as we scroll down, notice that the image that we uploaded, 1.6 megabytes, is basically we're using bandwidth to serve that entire image. However, because this is such a small thumbnail image, it's completely unnecessary that we're serving that much data. So basically, if you can imagine that every single one of these feature requests had an image associated with it, which was, 1.5 megabytes each, then pretty instant, if each of these had an image, then already just by loading this page, it would use potentially 20 megabytes of your bandwidth. So if you had 50 users loading this page, then there you go. That's already reaching your 1 gigabyte bandwidth limitation per day on the free plan. So how can we address this? Basically, it's really good to notice this and just kind of be attentive of how much bandwidth we're using, and then let's prompt it to basically explain that problem. So on the feedback board page, when we are displaying a thumbnail image, it is showing let's serving the image at full resolution and using a lot larger, more bandwidth than necessary. When uploading an image, please compress it and add a much smaller thumbnail image so that this thumbnail image is used in the feature card. The goal is to reduce the bandwidth used on the feedback board page. So there we go. Now, what I like to do is also explain kind of like what the goal is. Like we've given it a clear task, but it's also important to kind of explain your goal, because sometimes if you don't explain it properly, then it's really useful to explain your goal, because then the agent has, a little bit more context. Okay, so we'll send that off and we'll let that start working. So that's good. We're working on kind of our bandwidth optimizations, and we're trying to figure out how we can scale this app for a larger audience. Now, while we're doing that over here in this project, let's jump over into our duplicated version. Now, notice we've duplicated it. So if we go, we've got the exact same database. However, we don't have any data. The reason why we have noticed that we've got categories and we've got 6 rows here is sometimes when you duplicate the project and it duplicates the database, if these categories had been hard-coded into the migration files, which is basically the files that set up the schema of your database, if these have been, written in here somewhere, which I bet they have, then that's why it's carried over into the database. So if we look and we see our categories, we've got one called enhancement. So if we search enhancement, we can see it's popping up here within the database SQL migration file. So that's why sometimes when we duplicate our project that we see some rows carry across, because we've actually told our database with this file while we're setting it up that we'd like it to include certain rows in the database. Okay, so now with that covered, let's get into some really exciting stuff about using LLMs within our app. Now, one feature from like a user experience point of view is basically we want to think about all of the feedback that we're requesting, and we want to make sure that when we request, some feedback, that we don't want to be duplicating. We don't want to be basically requesting the same thing as someone else, because then it can lead to too many items in the feedback. And wouldn't it be great if when we're logging a feedback item, what if we could almost search all of the other feedback items, and before posting the item, what if we could actually see what are the most semantically similar items to the one that we're creating? Because there's perhaps a very similar issue that somebody else has already written about, and we can probably just, upvote that feature request instead of complicating all the feature requests and making it hard for the developers to get to. So when I say semantic, like what do we mean by that? And that's basically capturing the meaning of something, so you could say, if I come to an example, and if you think of the word king, that's like a male ruler, right? Or if you think of the word queen, that's like a female ruler. So, you could basically, if you said like female king, that almost has the same meaning as queen. But if you were using the exact words by saying male king, then those words do not match with queen whatsoever. But if you're capturing the actual meaning of them, then they're actually quite similar in their meaning. And that's what we want to get to the essence of. And that's what we want to capture by, we're going to be implementing vector embeddings and retrieval augmented generation in a minute. So it sounds complicated, but I'll show you exactly how to do that. Now, I've heard that we've got the beat.
Can you translate that? Can you translate those technical terms as you're using them for non-coders who just are playing with a really cool website?
Yeah, sure. I've got a slide in ready to go. So what I'll do is I'll get to that, and I'll give you a less technical explanation of those terms in a minute. So let's jump back into this project, and we're kind of looking at the thumbnail image here. So let's see, we've requested it to basically, it says when a user uploads an image with a feature request, it basically compresses the image and it basically adds that at a lot smaller file size. So let's test if it works. We're going to submit a request now, and we're going to say image 2. Now let's choose another image. This is again 1.7 megabytes. We're going to open this up. So it's got the screenshot of that. And now let's submit the request. So, okay, we can see we have our image 2 has been added, and we've got the thumbnail image. What happens this time if we inspect the page? And we're going to look at network. Now let's refresh it. Let's clear this, and now we'll jump into our feedback board. So let's have a look. It looks like this image is the original one from the previous one from the test feature. And because we had uploaded this image before we'd implemented the feature, this one doesn't actually have a thumbnail image associated with it. So that's why we're still seeing such a large file size. However, if we look at this other image here, we can see it's only 3.4 kilobytes compared to 1600 kilobytes. So it's incredibly a lot less, and we don't really notice, like, they kind of visually from a user's perspective, they both look the same because we're not going to look really into detail. Now, what happens if we open this feedback card? We can now see that it's loaded a large image and it's loaded the image at a full size. So there we go. Let's just to double check that this is all working. Let's delete this old image. Let's delete this old feature request. So we'll get rid of this one. Now we're going to go back to our feedback board. We're going to submit another one, image 3. Let's open this up. This was the original image that we used. Uploading. It's got it in there. We'll submit the request. So we've got image 2 and image 3. We'll refresh the page. We'll clear the log, jump back into the feedback board. And so now we've loaded both of those thumbnail images, and we can see that one of them is 4 kilobytes and the other one is 3.4 kilobytes. So we've, just by doing that, we've reduced the bandwidth of loading this page to only 16 kilobytes, or now that it did another check, it's up to about 18 kilobytes, as opposed to, I think it was 2 megabytes before. So that's like 1% of what we were using before. So just by a very simple request like that, we've now reduced our bandwidth usage by 99%. And when you imagine that with all the users that you have and all the pages that they're loading, all the features you have, that doing something like this can really have an important impact on your basically for you, the like all the information that you're serving to your users, but also it can make it faster for the user themselves. If they're on a mobile connection, their connection's not fast or whatever, or they're geographically located far away from the server, then all the improvements that you can do here have a user experience improvement as well. Great. Okay. So we've got that, and I think we're pretty happy with that. If we wanted to implement pagination, then that's basically the process. Hello. Oh, hello.
Yeah.
Derek, you have a question? No? Okay. So, oh, yes, no, maybe so. Moving on. So now pagination is basically the simple process. I'm sure you've seen this on Google before. Once you go to the bottom and it says load next page or load next page, it's a very simple process of only displaying, maybe 10 items at once, 20 items at once. And it's very simple to ask for as well. So let's just, for a demo purpose, we're going to say, let's implement pagination. On the feature request page, please implement pagination, where we should show 10 feedback items at once, and the other one should go onto a new page. Great. So we'll send that off, and now it's time to move over to some of the really exciting LLM side of things. So let's come back into our feedback board. Because this is the new account or the new project, I'm going to create another one. Let's say Liz, and Liz at gmail.com. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to create an account. Great. So Liz is logged in. Let's make Liz an admin. So, and we're going to save those changes. Great. So now we'll refresh, and she has her admin privileges. You can see this. We can make a feature request. So first feature testing. There we go. Great. Okay. So there's a few things I'd like to show here. The first one is coming back to that semantic idea and the idea of these vector embeddings. So if we jump into our PowerPoint, a vector embedding, it sounds like a big, confusing, scary word, but let's break it down and we'll make it simple. So think of a vector embedding as a way of translating human concepts such as words, images, sounds into a list of numbers that a computer can easily understand. That's all it is. It's just a list of numbers. Depending what the word is, it's going to change what numbers it represents and the numbers that represent it. So instead of just seeing a word as a string or letters, the computer places it as a point in a high dimensional map. So these numbers, think of them as a distance on a graph. Now, this is a 3-dimensional cube. 3 dimensions, meaning that a point in this 3-dimensional space can be represented by 3 different numbers. So one is the x-axis, the other number is the y-axis, the third number is the z-axis. Now, if it was just a 2-dimensional space, all we need is two axes here. Now, a vector embedding can be done on a much larger amount of dimensions. And it's really hard for us to comprehend because we live in a 3-dimensional world, but in the world of mathematics, we can create this multi-dimensional space. And so some vectors use several hundred dimensions. So there'll be several hundred numbers that represent this point in space. And it's hard to get your head around, but you don't really need to worry too much about that. Basically, the closer every time you create a vector embedding of a item, it could be a sentence, it could be a single word, it could be a whole paragraph. It'll basically use AI and it will determine where that point lives in this multi-dimensional space, and it'll give it that list of numbers. So items that are similar will be placed close together and their numbers will be quite similar. So basically, we can do what's called like a similarity search, and we can find all of the these points that we represent in this multi-dimensional space. The closer they are together, the more similar their meaning is. And that's about all we need to grasp for now. So basically in a vector space, words like king and queen would be located near one another, while apple would be far away. This allows AI to grasp context, nuances, and the relationships by simply measuring the distance between these numerical points. Okay, so that's basically vector embeddings explained. So now coming back to our project, and in fact, this is all done, so I may as well carry on here.
You gonna explain transformers next? I'm just kidding. That was such a complex
Yeah.
You're like, simplify.
Yeah, there's some very complicated topics here, right? And that's why the world's cutting edge minds are researching these. So I think Andre, I'm trying to remember his Karpathy, I think that's how you pronounce it. I think he was like head of AI at Tesla. I think he was also one of the founding members of OpenAI. He has an incredible YouTube video where he talks about LLMs in about a 3-hour video. So I highly recommend looking that up. So anyway, let's get back to it. Submit request. Now, what we're going to do is let's make this request. actually, what I'll do is I'll clear the context first. Now, all of that kind of UI that we were talking about, these thumbnail images and compressing, has now been cleared. So the context is fresh and we're ready to kind of start again. So now let's start on this fresh new feature request. And I guess you can just listen to my dictation. So when we are submitting a feature request and we see the modal, which has a title and description, I would like you to use OpenAI's vector embedding service to create a vector embedding for the feature request. It should include the title and it should include the description. Okay, this vector should be saved to the database so that we can use retrieval augmented generation on it later. It's kind of a complicated ask. It probably needs to do some research as to what vector embedding service we want to use. So I'm going to put it into plan mode, and now we're going to send off this request.
Is that the same prompt for like Gemini or Claude?
Yeah, so each of these foundation labs or these big labs have their own vector embedding services. So that's something you can just ask. What are some of the state-of-the-art vector embedding models? And we'll see what it says. So OpenAI has a vector embedding model. I guess the API is what's important to us. Like we want to use, have an API-based model so that we can basically send it off and then retrieve the information back. So there we go. Google has one. Voyage AI, they perhaps specialize in vector embeddings. Cohere, OpenAI, etc. NVIDIA, Alibaba. So they all have different context windows and some are more accurate. Here are the dimensions that I was talking about. So the Gemini one is 3,000 dimensions. Sometimes it does improve the accuracy of it by having higher dimensions, but it also depends how the model's trained. So there's plenty that you can look into there. Now, here we go. So it's created a plan for us. Let's have a quick read through this plan. So add OpenAI vector embeddings to feature requests for RAG. So enable vector extension in the Bolt database. It's creating the embedding column. Let's see. It's using text embedding 3 small, which is one of OpenAI's embedding APIs that we were just looking at. This all looks pretty aligned. So it's asking for our OpenAI key. So great. So I have an OpenAI API key, which I will provide. All the rest sounds good. Let's go ahead and implement. Turn it off plan mode, and we'll send that off. Great. So we'll let that think. That'll probably take a few minutes. Now, basically, we're doing the first step of the process right now. So when a user creates one of these feedback items, every time they create it, it's now going to send that off to this vector embedding service. It's going to create that string of numbers and it's going to place it on that multi-dimensional space. And then it's going to return that number and it's going to save that in the Bolt database. So that's the first step. Now, let's come back to our slideshow. And that's basically what I just described is what it's doing here. So you've got your question or your feature or whatever it may be. It sends it off, it gets the embedding, and then it saves that embedding in the database. Now, the next step, which is where it's this kind of retrieval augmented generation, which again, sounds confusing, but it's a simple step-by-step process. It starts off the exact same. So let's say we now have embeddings for all of our features in the database. When we're creating a new feature, what we're going to do is we're going to ask, how do I do X? What it's going to do is it follows the same initial process. It's going to create an embedding for the question that you've asked. And then with that embedding, it's going to put it in your database. It's going to put it in the Bolt database. And now, because the Bolt database uses Supabase under the hood, and Supabase, even under their hood, has these extensions, or they basically have these services that's kind of inbuilt into the database. And one of them is it's called PG Vector. And what that does is it allows you to compare all of your vectors together, all of these strings of numbers, and it's able to determine which are the closest within that 3D space. So if we come back to our diagram, it's able, with all of those vectors you have in your database, it determines which are the closest, and then it can return basically with a percentage chance of similarity. It'll say, okay, this result is 99% similar. This result is 90% similar, and all the rest are less than 50% similar because of how they're clustered in this multi-dimensional space. So with that, it then determines what are the relevant snippets, and it finds all of the all of these other rows in your database with your feature requests that are similar to a certain degree. And then it's going to put all of them into an LLM. It's going to say, it's going to use all of that as context. And then now that your LLM has basically your initial question and then also all of the relevant items from your database, you're then able to kind of prompt the LLM, and from that prompt, it's able to give you an answer based on your initial question and then all of the relevant snippets. So again, it sounds confusing, but let's come back into our project and we'll see where we're at with it. So it's asking us for our OpenAI API key. Now, here we are in the OpenAI API dashboard. So I'm just going to create a new secret key. We're going to call this workshop rag, and we're going to create our secret key. I'm going to copy that. Now we'll jump back into our Bolt project. It's asking us to add it into our secrets. So I'm going to paste our API key, create the secret, and here we go. It's been added. Great. So we've saved it in our secrets. We've prompted it. Sometimes it gets it wrong on the first try, but let's see how well it's done. So we're going to submit a request, and actually let's quickly look in our database and we'll see if it's modified the database. So if we look at our feature requests, it should have, here we go. So it's added this column called embedding, and we can see that because we've already had these feature requests, they don't have an embedding yet. But what if we add a new feature? And let's say the AI agent isn't responding the way I thought it would. And now we're going to submit our request. Now, where is it? The AI agent isn't responding the way I thought it would. Let's look into our database, come into our feature requests, scroll across. And so we're still on null, which basically means it didn't work properly. So let's find where it is. Yep, so it definitely did add to our database, but it didn't call the embedding model properly. So we're going to prompt that. I just created a new feature request, and then I checked in the database, and in the embedding column, it is still null. So it didn't create the embedding properly. Now, also what I'm going to do is we're going to open up our console log. So if we go inspect, we can come into our console, and this sometimes gives our agent a little bit more context. So basically here we can see failed to load resource. And now this can often be a little bit overwhelming and confusing, and we may not know which one to actually look at. So what I'm going to do is sometimes we can just copy our whole console log. We're going to copy that because, as I was saying, this may be confusing to you. I'm just going to copy all of it to make things simple. Now, let's say here are all the messages from my console log. Don't act on any of the other messages. Let's just focus on getting this embedding to work. And so we're going to paste that in. Let's go into plan mode. We'll send it off. How are we going for time? All right. About 12 minutes left. Anyway, that's working. We'll let it plan. We'll let it think. Now, another thing I kind of want to show you is if we come into the OpenAI API dashboard and we, for example, they've released GPT 5.2 and here's some information how to explain how to use it. Now, say you want to use this model. You can actually, because the training knowledge of Opus 4.6 probably cut off a few months ago, and maybe this has been released sooner than that, often our model itself may not have information on the latest APIs. So that's where we can basically, copy some information about this, which I'll get to in a sec because this just finished its plan. So we'll come back to this. Let's see what it's saying. So fix a 401 on the embedding page. So this single chain should resolve it. Yeah, let's see. We'll implement this plan. We'll let it work. Okay, so coming back in here, as I was saying, when these new APIs get released, often our model hasn't been trained on how to use them. So a really good practice to get into is if we do want to, use one of these new models, so GPT 5.2, what we can do is we're going to click, and they've made it really useful for us that they've actually created a markdown document which explains exactly how to use this. So I'm going to copy this. I'll jump into our other projects, and basically within code, what I'm going to do is basically add a new file, and we're going to call this using GPT 5.2. And we're going to paste all of this markdown information, and we'll save that. All right, I heard the bleep, so we'll jump back to our project. Let's see, hopefully it's working. Feedback board, submit request, test embedding.
Question.
Yes.
After you submit that, can we just put it in a prompt and it would do the same thing, or is it really important to create that document and put it in the code?
Yeah, no, you're right. You can just do it directly in a prompt, and I'll be doing it twice so I can demonstrate that on the second time. So here we go. We'll submit our request here. Let's jump into our database, feature requests. Okay, we still do not have an embedding, which is a little frustrating. So let's inspect our console log again. Actually, it does say generate embedding. Sometimes it takes a few seconds. So let's, it's still, yep, it's still not showing. So what we can do is copy this and say the vector is still not being added to the Bolt database. Here is our console log. Get this thing out of the way. Determine what's causing this issue and propose a plan to fix. Think deeply. Okay.
Because you're not adding a description, just the title?
Are you saying I'm not adding a screenshot of this? Is that what you're asking?
The description,
Description. Perhaps that may be why. Let's try. So test embedding again, description, submit request. Oh, embedding generation failed. I can see it's invalid JSON web token. So notice that we were actually able to kind of figure that out here in the agent. So it's going to it's going to figure out basically how to fix it. And this can get a little bit technical for the non-technical people here. So that's why, it's the best thing you can do is sort of, sometimes you can prompt it. You can say add console logs to help when necessary. Sometimes, it just provides the console logs, and I've just copied these across. I put them in. And now by giving the agent the content, basically knows how to fix it. So it's working on that. And now it's working on the plan to fix. Okay, so that's still working along. While that's working, let's jump back into our other build. Now we've added using GPT-5.2, so we've saved that. Now another document here is GPT-5.2 prompting guide. So we're going to view this as a markdown document. We're going to copy this, and as one of our participants just recommended, let's see if we can add it as a markdown document just by pasting it. So I'm going to paste the file. Here it is, and then please add this markdown, or this information as a markdown document in the project root file. So simple as that. And go Sonnet 4.6, and we'll send that off, and we'll watch. At the moment, we've only got using GPT-5.2, so we'll see what it does. Let's come back in here. It's created a plan, and let's implement this plan. Okay. Now I can see the time. Technically, it's 5 minutes till this workshop ends, but I want to get this working, so we may go overtime. For those of you that do have to leave because you've got something else, feel free to bounce, and we'll put this workshop as a YouTube recording. So you're welcome to, go onto our workshop YouTube playlist, and I think by Friday we should have it up. Feel free to watch if you've got to bounce. For those of you who'd like to stay on, feel free, and we're going to try and get this all sorted. Okay, so here we go. We can see here it's now created. I can't create documentation files unless explicitly requested. However, notice there's already that in the project root. Would you like me to add the content there or create a new markdown file? Create the new markdown file, please. Okay, great. So that's going to work. Here we go. Build successful. Third time's the charm, they say. Hopefully this works. Feedback board. And let's just do something. Let's say improve the UI of the database. There we go. Please make it look better. Submit request. Votes. Newest. Okay, so improve the UI of the database. Now let's click in here, feature requests. Geez. Okay, so we're still on no embedding just yet. Let's inspect it one more time. Clear this. Test feature testing. Okay, so I'm going to copy this, paste. The embedding still didn't generate properly. Please think deeply about what's going wrong and fix it. Okay, here we go. Now, I've done this probably 5 times now when I was testing. Usually it takes maybe 2 or 3 prompts. I feel like this has gone above the average amount, but hopefully by the end of this prompt, we'll have it all ready. Okay, so we'll let that work. Come back into here. This is still thinking, adding the markdown file. We'll let that work. Okay. So, I guess, do we have any questions about how this RAG system works? Hopefully I've tried to be clear. It's just still thinking. Just running a bit.
Hey, I got a question.
Sure.
Hey, by chance, you guys do one-on-ones to help solve issues with this? Because I've been having some errors with mine, one of my 6 different things that I'm building.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically we've got two approaches to that. So one is when you create a team, we're prioritizing teams. So a team of 3 or more people. Once you create that, you'll get like a welcome email, and then there is a chance to do a one-on-one session. Also, with some of our like higher MRR customers, our customer success engineers do calls with them. So, Erica, I'm not really sure what the cutoff tier is there.
Well, I've been a member. I've been with Bolt.new sent for a year now. I've tried many different things, but this is life changing for a lot of people. And I would like a one-on-one because I have some complications with something and a lot of errors with some other things. And I also would like to give my input on something that you guys should kind of add.
We do hire developers or work with developers through contra.com, and they're Bolt experts. So you can also find a Bolt engineer specifically to help with your one-on-one.
What was that? What site was that?
I'll send it in the chat.
All right, thanks, man.
And then also you can just shoot us an email at support@bolt.new. And we can also respond.
I've done several before. I never got
Okay.
it. But I'm sorry. Thanks.
Cool. I'll carry on with this. I feel free to, I guess, speak with Erica in the chat just because time is pressing. We did get it working that time. I'm not sure if you saw, here we are in feature requests. So this most recent one that we put, we do have a vector embedding. So it was able to work. It was able to create the vector, which is exactly what we want. So notice that it's a really long string, super, super long, hundreds of dimensions here, and you can basically see, I think they're usually between 1 and -1. So here are all, and that basically represents that feedback item on that multi-dimensional space like we suggested. So basically what that
Then I'm
means,
sorry, what does that do? Is it
yeah
translating the feature? Is it making recommendations?
Yeah. So let me come to that. And what we'll do is let's implement a search. So basically, I'll prompt it to do exactly the next step. So next to the submit request button on the feature request page, add another button which says semantic search. When I click this, it should open up a modal, and I should be able to enter my search requests. Once I press search, please create a vector embedding for this search request, and using a similarity search, find all other feedback items which are semantically similar and display them. So let's create a plan for this because it's a bit of a multi-step process. Basically, what we're doing now is we're adding a search input box. I know we've got a search here, but because this is functioning in a different way, that's why I'm adding a new button for it. Basically, what this search button will do is when we click on it, we'll be able to type our feature request, and then we'll press search. And once we press search, it'll create a vector embedding for that search that we've created. And then it should do a similarity search with all of the other vectors that we have in our database. And it will be able to find the most similar items. And I think it uses something called like a cosine similarity search, which is basically a very fast way for it to look through all of the items in our database and determine what are the most similar points on that multi-dimensional space, and it will return them here as a result to our search. And if we come back to that kind of mail or female king analogy that we were thinking about, or if we say a female king and then also a queen, like they don't have any similar words at all, but it should understand the meaning of each of them and then put them together in a similar space and return the basically feedback items based on the meaning. So here we go. It's created a plan for us. I'll have a quick look through this. So it creates a new function for search embeddings. Great, so it's done that. And now let's implement this plan. Okay, let's come back into our other build. Here it has created both of these markdown documents. So now it should know how to use this new kind of GPT 5.2 model. And in this example, what we're going to do is, as an administrator, notice that because there's no actual feedback, let's add some. Please implement dark mode. Whoops. Edit. Dark mode. I'm going to save that. Please improve the AI agent. Submit this, and let's say, please improve the UI of the database. I'm going to submit that. Okay, great. So we've got a couple features that we've added in here. Now, let's basically, what we're going to do in this other example is we're going to summarize some of these feature requests. So because we've added this basically context of how to use GPT 5.2, it should be able to reference both of these. Now, let's create a prompt. So in the admin dashboard, please create a button which, once pressed, it will summarize all of the feedback items using ChatGPT 5.2. Look in the project root for the markdown documents which explain how to use this API. And then I'm going to go to Opus 4.6, plan it out, and we'll send that off. Great. So let's jump back in here. This is still working. I know we've gone. Yes.
I noticed that sometimes you prefer to plan and sometimes you prompt in. And I've seen your video where you said like planning's really great, but does planning usually enable like deeper thinking?
Yeah.
Is that why you do it?
Yeah, exactly. So basically plan mode, it just focuses its context on reading your project files and then thinking through how are we going to use all that information to implement this. It doesn't use any of its context to actually write the code itself. And so by doing that, it's almost saying like, okay, we're allowing more context to be assigned to reading our code base and then also, planning it out rather than having to do that third step of writing the code and adding these files as well. So it just kind of, it also will sometimes ask you
More brain power to thinking, just problem solving.
Exactly. It's kind of like saying, yeah, we'll give you an hour to think about how to do a math problem instead of 5 minutes. And it can think about different ways to approach it. And yeah, exactly like you said, more brain power. Okay, so this one's done. Hopefully it works first time. Let's see. So it's just about to refresh. Here we go. So feedback board. And now let's basically, we're going to add a few requests and we're going to say, please improve the AI agent's capabilities. I'm going to do that. We're going to say, please add dark and light mode support. I'm going to submit that. And we're going to say, please improve the user interface of the database. Great. So we're going to add all three of those. Let's have a look in our feature requests. Let's see if they've all got embeddings. Okay, great. So we had 1 before, now we've got 4. So all of those got embeddings. Now we're going to do the semantic search. We're going to say, it would be great if you could add low light support. That's probably not the best way to kind of get around light and dark mode. Low light support and improve the appearance in all environments. Okay, maybe that wasn't the best way to word it, but let's see.
Stop
Let's
my
see if
eyes
this
from
works.
burning after I develop for 8 hours.
Yeah, pretty much. We'll see how this works, and we'll hit search. Okay, failed to generate search embedding. So I think it's having the same issue. Often when we're generating our embeddings, whoops, not network, console. Let's paste this and say, when doing the semantic search, it failed to generate an embedding for the search itself. Here is my console log. I was able to successfully generate an embedding for the features, so perhaps use the same method. Okay, I'll send that off, and hopefully second time around we're able
For
to.
the previous feature, it disabled the JWT, so maybe that's why.
Yes, good observation. So I perhaps probably should have prompted that just then. That's a really good point.
Correct.
Sort of noticing like, okay, what was the issues that it had on the first time? How can we improve these going forward? And, you know, if I was actually doing this kind of like using the best possible way is after finishing that, you know, getting it to work successfully, what you can do is you can say, look at the process that we just went through. Please document this as a markdown file, exactly the method to follow or the steps to follow when creating an embedding. And so what it would do, similar to what we've done in this project, where we've created a markdown document, is it can actually kind of summarize the mistakes that it's made and the proper way to go forward, and then save that so that every time you're doing another embedding that it can actually reference it properly. So let's see just if that basic prompt work. So we're going to do semantic search. I've noticed that in all light settings, sometimes the user interface doesn't look the best. So let's see. Yay. Okay. So it looks like our vector embeddings worked, at least for the search. And then what it did is it compared this request to other requests that we've found, and we can see the percentage match. So perhaps because I didn't explain it particularly well, that's why it wasn't a super close match. But if we can say, you know, what was I think we were talking about the AI agent. So let's say something that's actually quite similar to that. So please improve the AI agent's capabilities. And let's say the capabilities of the AI agent could be improved. Search. And here we go. Please improve the AI agent's capabilities. And we've got an 81% match. And then we can see this one is a lot lower down and it's a 34% match. So just like that, we've been able to implement our semantic search. Let's see our other example. We'll see how it works. So I'm going to say King, submit request. And now let's do a semantic search with, wait, sorry, my bad. King, so male.
Male queen.
Male queen, thank you. Male queen. There we go, King. And okay, 36% match. It's not as high as it could be, but I think what this does demonstrate is that out of all of the other vector embeddings, this one was the most similar. So sometimes you can choose whether you want to display that, you know, percentage match to the audience or not. That's kind of a choice that you can make. But basically, this goes to demonstrate that now we don't need to use explicit words, and we can actually use this, you know, retrieval augmented generation approach so that we can understand the meaning of everything that we've added in here. Cool. So I'm glad we got that working. We could, if we're thinking about the most optimal user experience, perhaps when we're submitting the request, that this is a two-stage process. And so the user types their request, and instead of submitting it directly, this request itself could be search existing features. And by pressing that, it could then do the same semantic search, and then it could, determine if there are similar ones, and it could add this intermediary step where it says, instead of creating a new feature request, would you like to merge it with one of these? So there we go. Hopefully that answers your question. I know we were a little bit confused about some of these more technical terms, but hopefully that demonstration has shown how it works. Now, I know we've gone way over time. Let's have a look here and we'll see if we can get this working. I think the purpose of this is sometimes you may have noticed if we're trying to implement like LLMs, and we may say, let's add a API call to basically we want to summarize text or whatever it may be, and it'll use like a very early model. And that's because the training that Opus 4.6 has, it has like a training cutoff. All models have a training cutoff. And often, I think for ChatGPT 5.2 that came out, I think in January, maybe last month, I think their knowledge cutoff was in like August. So maybe 6 months before when they're actually released. So in that 6 months, new models are released. You want to leverage the best models possible. And so that's why if we can, add markdown documents explaining how to use these new models, and, it'll say things like key behavioral differences. It'll explain, this is documentation that OpenAI has created themselves. So they're the people who know the model the best. And by adding this information in here to your agent, we can now see that the agent itself is reading these documents. And by doing so, it will now become an expert on how, one, to implement these APIs, these API calls, but then also it'll become an expert on like, what are the actual prompts that I can use when I'm creating this edge function, when I'm, talking to the API. What is the language that I can use so that I can get the most out of this model? Okay, we'll wait for this last one to finish, but here we go. I hope this has been useful. I hope you've enjoyed learning basically how semantic search can work. Hopefully you can implement this directly in your app. And as I was saying, it really goes a long way in reducing the the overhead of the developers. Whoever's running this site, they can just look, and hopefully the users have kind of merged these requests together. And it just makes managing something like this so much easier. I know that the search in other dashboards or documentation, like sometimes you'll search something and you won't get any relevant results. So this is a great way that you can kind of address that and provide the best search results possible. Okay, let's see how this is going. We'll run this build. Hopefully it works first time. Now, as always, I know some of you guys are probably dropping off because this has gone way over time. Let's give a big thank you to Erica. So Erica, thank you so much for being in the chat, for answering all the questions. I can see that there's 90 chat messages that have been going on in the meantime. So well done there. Thank you so much for doing that. Everyone, let's give a big thank you to Erica for her help and being there in the chat. And as always, if you guys attended via Luma, if you can leave feedback for the Luma in the Luma page, that would be really appreciated. It really helps us gauge, how useful these sessions are. Feel free to leave some honest feedback if there's anything we can do to improve and if you find these things useful. Okay, so now it's asking us for our OpenAI API key. If we come in here, I'm gonna have to create another one because you can't actually view them once you've created them. So we're gonna call this GPT 5.2, create secret key, copy. We'll add that in here. We'll paste.
Do you need a different API key for every function, or can you use one if you
Exactly.
remembered it?
You can use one. You can use one. This, because remember we duplicated the project, it doesn't, when you duplicate the project, it doesn't carry your API keys over. So you could have added the same one as before. So there we go. Sometimes it's actually nice to have two, because in your API dashboard, you can kind of see the usage based on each of the keys. And so let's say you're implementing two AI functions. One is to generate images. The other one is to summarize text. And now you're scaling this out to a bunch of users and you're trying to make your app more profitable. By having these different server functions as different API keys, perhaps it's maybe a better way that you can inspect which one is, which of these functions is actually using more of your credit. Sometimes you might find that the image generator maybe uses 90% of your API bill, compared to the other one might only be small. So then you can kind of tactically think, okay, what can I do to optimize my profits here?
It's a great idea. Thank you.
So here we are, we're back, completed. Let's go into admin, summarize feedback. Uh-oh, I'm gonna have to go through the same sort of process again. I know if some of you have to drop, feel free to do so. But I'm just gonna go through the exact same process. I'm gonna copy this and say, when summarizing feedback on the administrator dashboard page, it failed to generate a summary. Here is my console logs. Here are my console logs. Paste those in, plan it out. Okay. Now, as you've noticed with this demonstration, sometimes we have had to go back and forth in the console several times. It's not just you. If you have these errors and these issues, and this does kind of show that prompting like this can often be a back and forth with the agent, and it might take a little bit of persistence and several times to get things right. I use Bolt every day. It's my life. It's my job. It's even even I still have these issues. Even the best have these issues. I'm not sure if you guys heard too much about OpenClaw, but the creator of it had Peter Steinberg, something like that. He did a really good podcast on the Lex Friedman show. So he kind of does a bit of a deep dive into how he prompts and some of the things that he's learned along the way. It's worth listening if you've got an hour and a half or so to listen to. There's all sorts of prompting guides out there. X is another great resource. A lot of the times people will add kind of their prompting suggestions on there. Okay, so I kind of blindly just implemented this plan. A lot of the times I like to kind of look through it and read, but it's also a great way to learn. Notice that it's mentioning the JWT again here. So that seems like it's a common issue that we're facing. Okay, so let's see if this implements.
What is JWT?
It's a JSON web token. So basically what that is it's once you log in to your dashboard, it basically requests this token from Supabase, and it kind of stores that on the front end of your browser. And basically that is a way that Supabase or the Bolt database has verified that the user is, successfully authenticated, and it kind of keeps that in local storage. And then whenever you're making these server calls to do your server functions, it's asking for your JWT, and it checks that with the database to make sure that it's valid, because this basically prevents, somebody else coming onto your website and just abusing some of your server functions. It's a great way to kind of like make sure that people are verified, and that, sometimes bots can come in and, just repeatedly run server functions if you don't use your JWT to authenticate the user. Okay, so let's see if this is working. We'll come to admin, summarize feedback. Still, we're having issues summarizing the feedback. Also, this console log. I've provided my console log showing the errors and also the front end error as well. Please look deeply and determine how we can fix this. Okay, third time's the charm. I know we've gone way over time. Thanks for your patience, everyone. We've had to cover a lot in this workshop. We have, I think, if we look back to the start, we've really optimized our bandwidth, which is great. We've implemented RAG, and now we're doing this third, basically summarization of all the feedback. Okay. Something that I have noticed is that these server functions that we're calling, because all APIs are different, that's why, sometimes we have these issues implementing it in the correct way. But as I was saying before, just try and stay persistent with it. And, after a few times, usually you'll get it working. Okay. So it's working it out. Okay, it's still having a JWT verification issue. Okay, like one of the other attendees suggested, I probably should have mentioned that from the start, that it should think more carefully about the JWT. Okay. I was asking some clarifying questions. Are you logged in as an admin when testing this? 1, yes. 2, do you want me to also add? Yes. 3, yes. Okay. Now we'll implement this. Okay, I think what we'll do is we'll give it one more attempt. Hopefully it works. If not, what I'll do is I'll film a recording. I know you guys probably all have things to get onto. I'll film a recording and then I'll add it to the end of the YouTube video that we upload. So you can all catch up on it then. Okay. So, Erica, also, if you've got to bounce, then I understand. I know you've probably got other things to do. So
I'm still answering questions. I'm
okay.
busy.
Cool. I hope everyone's been finding this useful. I know we've recently been testing out little banners. Once you're inside Bolt, you might see little information banners that pop out around the side and basically advocates for these workshops. If you're new here, we also do office hours. So next Tuesday, we'll have some more members of the Bolt team and they'll jump on a call and you can ask some question directly. Somebody from engineering, product and marketing, engineering, product and design, sorry. So they're real experts in how the Bolt agent works. Okay.
Do you use Luma to sign up for that, or you just show up?
Yes, exactly. Hey everyone, we're back. We're going to keep working on this error until we've got it fixed. So basically I've logged out and logged back in again with the same user, hoping that that would fix it, and it didn't. So basically we have I've posted our issue here. I copied over the console log and I put it in, and it looked through the function and it basically found that the server function already does its own auth check internally. So the gateway level JWT check is redundant, and that is likely what's failing due to the token format or a timing issue. So it's redeploying it with verify JWT false. The function's own authentication logic already handles the security. So now that the agent has gone ahead and done this, once we press summarize feedback, it's generating. It's a good sign that it hasn't returned an error immediately. And here we go, feedback summary. So it's analyzed those 3 items. It's created a total items analyzed. It's created a sentiment, engagement level, etc. Notice that all of this isn't something that we prompted ourselves. It used its knowledge from the code base. We gave it prompting instructions, how it can prompt GPT 5.2 in the best possible way using the OpenAI documents. And using all of that knowledge, it's been able to create this really comprehensive feedback summary form. And basically it's added things like what are the themes, what are the most requested, status breakdown, recommendations, etc. Rather than a developer having to manually look through this, figure out all of the requests from the week and prioritize them themselves. So 5.2 has done a really, really good job here of summarizing all the items here in one digestible format. Notice if we look closely, we can see the status of each of these. So they're all new. However, if we had changed the status, it would incorporate that as well. And then there's also noticing the upvotes as well. So this isn't something that we prompted. And because we have only tested with one user, we haven't upvoted any of them. But say that we did have a variety of different users and they had come in and they had voted for some of these, then we can see that the server function is actually considering the votes and the status as well when it comes into creating this summary. So there we go. I hope you find that really useful, and hopefully you're able to implement something like this in your projects, because these LLMs are really superpowering some of the apps these days, and it's there is a whole bunch of creative features that I'm sure you'll be able to implement if you just think about your app outside of the box a little bit and just approach it with a bit of creativity. I think because AI is so new and these LLMs are so new to the market, it's a really great opportunity to leverage them in a creative way to make your app stand out. So with that, I really hope you enjoy the workshop. I know we've gone a little bit over time, but we've covered a whole bunch in this workshop. Hopefully you've been able to take something away from it, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks. Bye.